I can't actually remember if I've made a video on this subject yet. Uh, it's very personal in any case. Um, Life has moved forward a great deal over the last 3 years, I'm happy to say. And I am in a really very different place now. Literally, in fact, in a different place. But um, this is really very, very substantially all due to my relationship. Relationships are, I think, very, very important. And the subject of love is, I think, very central to my life, to, I think, I would think, to everyone's life at some level, really. Um, the way that relationships change you is so important. The way that energies merge and meld and can support each other and bring about things together is very, very important. It matches in some ways, a lot of ways, the stuff I've talked about frequently about the elements work and the work with the elements and the archetypes and Richard Gardner and Tamar de Jong and these things. In the last, at least in the last year, it's been before that as well, but especially in the last year, there's been a very strong sense for me of how much I really feel at home amongst, kind of like your communal garden British pagans. I really am happy around these people, um, and it feels very good. And in general, I usually see that the two biggest streams I see cropping up in places where I feel really at home are, on the one hand, um, witchcraft, largely in the form of Wicca, often Gardnerian Wiccans, it seems, um, and and heathens, and those are the two groups that I find a lot of um, kind of good feeling with. But I've also had a really, really great experiences of homecoming with Thelemites, especially at the Thelemic Symposium last year. And I will be heading back there this year, I certainly hope. Um, and that's in Oxford. But I just feel, it feels like a home, just like ordinary British pagans I feel at home with, yeah. And there's an understanding there, and I'm very happy with that. Um, I do find myself looking back as well, looking back to my teenage years, and thinking of how inspired I was by the witchcraft that I saw then, stuff which would later people would call Wicca, yeah. And this was largely due to, well, through Alex and Maxine Sanders, yeah, and through the work of Stuart Farrar. And the sense I was talking to a Gardnerian friend of mine not so long ago, and I expressed something which I do actually consider to be very true for me, and that's that I look upon witchcraft as a religion of love, and really as the religion of love for me, yeah. Um, that's how I tend to see it, and of course, the witchcraft I'm talking about is uh, the sort of stuff that went into Wicca or what have you. Um, Now, I think all these things have a lot of relationships with other areas, other forms of witchcraft, um, and so many things turn out to actually be faces of one thing at the end of the day. I mean everything in some sort of like a universalist, you know, woozy sense of everything all is one or something, but so many things turn out to be faces of one thing. Certainly, through the researches that me and my friends have done in diabolism, I've kind of come to the conclusion that quite a bit of what I was finding in Wicca, or what would become Wicca, actually was on the right lines. Something in the popularized forms of Wicca seemed to really get lost over the years and over the decades. Really, really get lost. I mean, I don't know where to start with that. Yeah, but there was things there which were real, and then we always had this thing, and this is something I don't agree with, but we always had this thing with Diane Fortune. Diane Fortune would say, or was quoted as saying, all gods are one god, all goddesses are one goddess, and there's one initiator. And that I certainly don't agree with. I think it's a horribly overarching claim or statement. It's horrible. But nevertheless, I think it's quite true. The god of the witches does have different faces, and the goddess of the witches does have different faces. You could be surprised who's who, basically. And so I would certainly say that. And I think that's real. I think that's completely real, yeah. As I went through things in past years, I kind of went through an extremely hard polytheistic phase or time. And I call it a phase because although I am definitely a polytheist, the hardness of things does not necessarily match the reality, the actual reality of being. Yeah. And so that's where I'd say it was a bit of a phase. I am still a polytheist, but I do see these nuances and these complexities to things, that there are deities, there are entities that appear through different gods, or the faces of different gods to us, but they're actually the same entity. But it's specific ones with specific forms. So it's not all is one or all is two, if you go through that geotheistic thing, which I don't. It's not that, and neither is it. Neither is it a thing that every single one of these is absolutely separate. Yeah. It's neither one nor the other as far as I'm concerned. Another thing which I think is very interesting in witchcraft as it developed and as I learnt of it, most especially in the 70s, is this sense of this very deep interest in the mystery of what is of the masculine and the feminine. I think that's a very interesting thing as well. It's not the sort of thing that I want to see treated like really reductively or dogmatically. And I do think there is this sense that, of course, everyone finds that everybody has both masculine and feminine within them. And I would even go as far as to say that there is, in a sense, male and female within everybody. I think it's important to be able to say that and know what you mean with it, if you see what I mean. It's not, I don't think it's talking about what people nowadays call transgenderism, because a lot of that involves gender dysphoria and various things, yeah. And other parts of it seem to be extremely mental, extremely in the head, if you know what I mean. And that's not what I mean. This is a sense of the embodied soul, and that we do have this, and I think this is an important thing. Yeah. It seems like a modern perspective. It seems like a modern perspective in many ways, at least a 20th century or 19th to 20th century perspective. but I think it's important for us. I think it's important for us. There's an immensely important thing to be gained from this, and similarly from the Elements work with Richard Gardner and Tamara de Jong, about the rapprochement between the masculine and the feminine, and that these things can be in harmony and be in peace with each other, and it's a tremendously important thing to be able to have that. It's immensely important in our lives, I think. And that leads me on to another sense of something, which is much of the kind of mysticism and spirituality that I've been interested in over the years. I think you could say it relates to non-duality. Yeah, it relates to non-duality. But to realize non-duality, it cannot be realized theoretically. Yeah. In the whole of our experience, we meet duality, we meet dualisms and duality. And yet in the spiritual reality, we find that these things are actually one. And that's tremendously important. And so there is something about the pagan traditions, and I'm thinking here about, specifically because it's what I know, I'm thinking about witchcraft. Yeah. And the experience of witchcraft, and the god of the witches and the goddess of the witches. The specific thing I'm thinking about here, there is a sense that this is a kind of European tradition of non-dualism, but it's a non-dualism which can be experienced and is experienced actually in an embodied natural form. Yeah. So it's not simply a transcendent thing. It's a lived, experiential, organic, embodied understanding informed by non-duality. And that's something I'd say about it. I think that's about as much as I've got to say for today. Anyway, I hope you're all doing well. It's a rather nice time actually. It's a nice full moon. It feels like coming up tomorrow, I believe, or tonight, in fact. And actually, no, not tonight. I think it's early Thursday morning in the UK. Anyway, it's a nice time, and we're approaching midsummer. We're on the run up to midsummer. We have it feels like it might actually be a really lovely full moon coming. So I wish you a very